Hello and welcome. We begin in Mauritius. Keeping up with the election season across the world, the East African island nation of Mauritius is set to hold elections this Sunday. A country of 1.3 million people will be holding its legislative elections on the 10th of November. Mauritius is a parliamentary democracy and conducts elections every 5 years. While it has largely been one of Africa's biggest success stories owing to its relatively stable democracy, this year's elections are coming in the backdrop of several controversies and major political events. In Mauritius, the elections are being held for its unicameral National Assembly. Now, the unicameral is when the parliament consists of just one house in parliament. A total of 70 seats are up for grabs in the National Assembly, out of which 62 are directly elected members to the Assembly, while 8 others are appointed members to balance out representation. More than 1 million people are registered to vote in the 12th legislative election in Mauritius since independence. After the elections are held, the National Assembly appoints the President and the Vice President, who each serve a 5-year term. The President then appoints the Prime Minister from the party or coalition that holds the majority in the unicameral National Assembly. Now, being a parliamentary democracy, the President is largely a ceremonial head in Mauritius, with the real executive power being in the hands of the Prime Minister. Now, ever since its independence from the British in 1968, there have been mostly just 3 families that have held the corridors of power. They also lead the most dominant political parties in the country. First is Prime Minister Pravind Jugnauth. He inherited the premiership from his father when he died in 2017. He later won by a wide margin at the 2019 election as head of the Militant Socialist Movement, or the MSM. The next candidate standing in the election is Navin Ramgoolam. Now, he belongs to the Labour Party, which is a part of the Coalition Alliance of Change. Now, Ramgoolam is himself a former premier and the son of the country's first leader. The third major party is the Mauritian Militant Movement, which is led by Paul Berenguer, who has also previously been the Prime Minister of Mauritius. Now, Berenguer's party, however, is currently a part of the Alliance of Change coalition. Apart from these 3 major political parties, there are several more parties that are contending the elections on the 10th of November, including a new party called the Linear Reform Alliance that is campaigning under the slogan, "Neither Navin nor Pravind." Now, the 2024 legislative elections are being fought on several key issues. Some of the prominent ones include the rising corruption in the country, growing politicization of government institutions, prevalence of nepotism, the existence of unemployment, gender inequality, and issues of civil liberty. However, the 2024 elections might be remembered not for the issues that it was fought on, but rather the controversies and major political victories that surrounded it. In the lead-up to the elections, the country was engulfed in a shocking wiretapping scandal just last month. Reports indicated that about 20 phone conversations of politicians, journalists, civil society members, and even foreign diplomats had been recorded and leaked online. The wiretapping scandal had prompted Prime Minister Jugnauth to order internet service providers to block access to the most widely used social networks, including Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and X. The ban on social media led several opposition parties to condemn the government's move. They called the ban a political maneuver to avoid defeat in the November 10th elections. After widespread condemnation, the ban was reversed last week in embarrassment for the government. The ban was initially due to last until the 11th of November, a day after the elections were held. Moreover, this controversy stoked fears that rights were eroding in Mauritius. Mauritius last month slipped from the top spot to second place in the latest Ibrahim Index, which monitors governance across the African continent. Speaking at a rally in the capital city of Port Louis last week, Opposition leader Navin Ramgoolam had also criticised the government for curbing freedom and promised a change in Mauritius.
My mission is to restore freedom to Mauritians, to give our country back its reputation, and to return your rights to you.
But while the scandal rocked Mauritius, there was also a political victory that was being celebrated within the country. Last month, in a historic deal, the former colonizer Britain relinquished sovereignty of the remote Chagos Islands to Mauritius, following a long-running legal dispute. The deal came as a major success for the government, even if it meant that Britain retaining a lease to keep a joint US military base on the island of Diego Garcia for an initial 99 years, while members of the Chagosian community protested against the deal. But with the elections now looming over Mauritius, the big question remains, will Prime Minister Jugnauth be able to retain his majority? Or will the anti-incumbency change the tide in the island country? To discuss more on this, we have with us Musa Dung, a political analyst who is joining us live from Dundee in the UK. Thank you for being with us, Musa.
Thank you so much for having me.
Now, how has this wiretapping scandal influenced public opinion and the political landscape in the lead up to these elections? And what are the main issues that voters are prioritizing in light of these revelations?
Well, Alyson, one of the things that you've captured so well is the issue of rising corruption. That has been a really huge problem for Mauritius since 2019. And this is a specific concern given the type of economy that Mauritius has. It's really built a reputation, certainly in terms of Africa, as being a leader in terms of the service and financial sector and being a tax haven. And that has drawn a lot of investment within the country that has been much needed for the development of the country and its economy. And so for voters, linked to the issue of the economy is this issue of corruption. But further than that, is the issue of the freedom of expression, the freedom of association, of political association and beliefs, the rights and freedoms that are critical for any functioning democracy or any country that would want to see itself as a strong sort of investment haven. And so for people in Mauritius, this is definitely a huge issue for them, particularly when you consider, the recent events of the kind of police brutality that has been reported, as well as when you think of the kind of abuse and suppression that has been experienced by journalists in the country, which then acts as an impediment in the ability of people to access the kind of information they need to make the right decisions in terms of their interests when it comes to Sunday's poll. So for many people, the issue of corruption has been central.
Absolutely. And Musa, what impact has the social media ban has the social media ban had on political campaigns, voter outreach, and overall public discourse, especially in terms of the information dissemination and civic engagement in the run-up to these elections?
Well, look, the social media ban is quite huge for a country like Mauritius, where about 85 to 88% of the population receive their news from social media and are quite engaged in social media. And so the very fact that you would remove such a critical source of information, therefore speaks to the impediments towards those rights to information, right, which are very critical for voters to make informed decisions about elections in a time where so much is being questioned about where people get their information, the role of AI, right, in terms of the authenticity of the information people receive, and also the agenda that governments as well as at times corporates and media have in terms of shaping public discourse. And so for a country like Mauritius, where media has really over the past few years seen a huge growth in terms of its importance, it's quite interesting to see how people's views, even on on the quality in terms of social media, in terms of its freedom, has happened. So if you look at data from the Afrobarometer survey that was done this year, in 2020, you had 69% of the population that believed that, the media and social media was somewhat free versus 29% in 2020. All of a sudden in 2024, Alyson, to show you how serious this issue is, only 52% still believe it is somewhat free. And the number that moved from believing that it was not free, which was 29%, has moved up to 46%. So you can see that half of the population believe that media freedom, including in terms of social media, has certainly decreased over the past few years under the current administration, which entered power in 2020.
Right. And Musa, on that, are there concerns from human rights groups or international observers regarding the fairness and transparency then of the upcoming election, given the wiretapping scandal and the restrictions imposed on social media platforms?
Well, there's certainly been, some sort of international criticism or concern, certainly from observers. If you think of the European Union, you think of the Americans who have a vested interest, or from the United Kingdom, in terms of how these elections are going to be held, but also the state of the decay in terms of democratic institutions in Mauritius since 2019. This is a country, that moved from being described as a very stable, open democracy to an electoral autocracy. And that speaks to some of the risks that are being observed by international civil organizations around these elections and around the state of democracy in terms of Mauritius, which, by the way, is a very, very important country and will continue to play a very strategic, important role if you think about the geopolitical battles that are happening between China and the United States in terms of the Indo-Pacific region. So there'll be of vested interest in these elections, but given, as you said in the beginning of this conversation, this is a country that has been governed by three dynastic families, essentially, and as long as great powers will get the benefits that they want from it, it is unlikely that any international criticism will lead to any far-reaching change.
Right. Musa, as always, great to speak with you. Thank you for being with us on Firstpost Africa.
Thank you so much for having me.
Hello and welcome to this special edition of Vantage, live from the White House. America is Trump country again. He will be the 47th President of the United States of America. They're live from the White House, soon to be the new residence of Donald Trump. It was also here that Donald Trump brokered the Abraham Accords. So the voters have a legitimate question in their minds. If those presidents could do it, why not Joe Biden? The Arab voters want to punish the Democrats for supporting Israel. Joe Biden's shadow looms large over this election, and Kamala Harris may end up paying the price for it. This Trump hat, it says, President Trump save America. But this hat is made in China. And this is the Chinese interference that Americans must be investigating. But of late, Donald Trump and the Republicans have made some gains. And the biggest reason for that is illegal immigration. This is more than just a march, they say. This is a demand for accountability. The excitement, the tension is palpable. You can see the security presence. You can see the number of police cars, government buildings like these again fenced up. We're at Harvard University, the alma mater of Kamala Harris. As the night progressed, numbers came in thick and fast, and Donald Trump was soon declared the winner. It's being called a historic comeback. Another American presidency will begin. In Donald Trump's case, his second one.